This podcast is supported by The RealReal. Meet Christine. She loves shopping. And this is the sound of fashion overload. Too many fabulous things, not enough space. So Christine started selling with The RealReal.
I've always loved collecting designer pieces. Gucci bags, Prada heels. But my style keeps evolving. Selling with The RealReal? Game changer. I earn more, and they do everything.
Seriously, just drop off your items or schedule a pickup. We handle the photos, descriptions, pricing, even shipping. You just sit back and watch your items sell fast to our 38 million members.
And I get peace of mind knowing I earn more selling with The RealReal than anywhere else.
Exactly. That's the sound of your closet working for you. The RealReal. Earn more, save time, sell fast. And right now, you can get an extra $100 site credit when you sell for the first time. Go to therealreal.com to get your extra $100. Therealreal.com. That's therealreal.com.
DC politicians want to enact harmful credit card mandates that could take away your cash back and rewards points. Perks that stretch your budget and make life a little easier. Losing these benefits means less money for your family's everyday essentials like gas and groceries. The perks you rely on could disappear, leaving you with higher costs and fewer options. Tell Congress to guard your card and oppose the Durbin-Marshall credit card mandates.
Paid for by Electronic Payments Coalition.
A warm and friendly hello! Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peters, and now part of the VSIN family of podcasts. We have good news for you. The games, in this case, we would need to take off the S. Game is back in our lives. We've got one game on this Saturday. In the final segment, I'm going to give you guys picks and analysis on Stanford versus CSUN as we hit some bank shots. And here to lead off the show, we're going to be talking with one of our good friends, Ben Wilson. He does such an amazing job here at VSIN. He does a tremendous job with his play-by-play work, whether that be indoor football, college basketball, list goes on and on. He actually does some play-by-play work for the G League. So I'm going to be getting his thoughts on how we should be taking a look at these teams that are signing these G League guys. How big, how small is the impact of these G League guys going to be? We're also going to be taking a look at conference play, what to expect from some of the West Coast conferences, as he has seen the WCC up close and in person. Their conference play gets started within the next 72 or so hours, so we'll be chatting about that. We'll take a little bit of a look at the Big Ten as well, and then we'll get you those picks and analysis on our lone game in the final segment. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one or two ways we'll fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, RCM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. While I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, everything is powered by Better. That is BETR on Better, who's making it all the better to be able to dive in on some daily fantasy. All you need to do is, by being a listener to this fine podcast, go to BETR.app. You type in the promo code of VSINPOD, VSINPOD. That gets you $10 free to be able to get started. You can take a look at a player stat line, determine whether or not you're going to go over or under it. It's that easy. Where jurisdiction's allowed, you get some spreads and you get some money lines in your lives as well. So they do a tremendous job on that front, and a man that does such tremendous work is Ben Wilson. You're able to follow him on the old Twitter/X at his first name, Ben, and underscore his last name, Wilson, and underscore after that, and then the number 1. And Ben, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Hey, absolutely, Greg. Looking forward now that we're really, no matter the conference, it is conference time. So really excited to see what happens here over the next couple weeks and really figure out who's good, who's not within conference play here.
Absolutely, and you're the perfect guest to have on, Ben, because the biggest thing that we've seen in college basketball here over the last week or so, and this really comes without a lot of games because we haven't had a lot of those, unfortunately, but that said, these G League guys are getting signed mid-season by these teams. We saw James Nanji, the former number 31 pick, go on over to Baylor. We've seen a few other of these guys as well, and just how do you evaluate them? Because I know that you do a lot of play-by-play work for the G League, so you have a little bit more insider info on these guys, and you've seen these guys a little bit more up close and in person than a lot of us are mostly focused on college basketball this time of year. So what can we expect from some of these guys that are going from the G League on into college right at the beginning of conference play?
It's certainly unprecedented. It's been bizarre. I mean, we're only going to see more of it just with the way the legislation is set up. And Louisville is going to have London Johnson next year, who I covered for 2 seasons. He was at the G League Ignite. He was supposed to be the heir apparent to Scoot Henderson, and it just didn't really work out. He was banged up with injuries, and, it goes both ways, right? I mean, if you're one of these guys who was recruited to one of the G League programs, and I mean, the best example we have right now is Cherry Darlan out at Santa Clara. I covered the WCC, and I know Cherry well. He was there the final year of the Ignite when I was their team broadcaster. But, he's coming off the bench. It's not like these G League guys are going to come in. I think there's a misnomer here that just because somebody was in the G League, and that means that by the letter of the law, they were a professional for some time, that they're just going to come into the college game and be putting up 30 and 15 every night. And that's just simply not the case. I mean, you look at individual aspects of, say, a Darlan or a Johnson, who you'll see next year at Louisville. I mean, those guys were teenagers brought in the developmental thought of, okay, spend 2 years in what would have been their senior year of high school and then equivalent to their freshman year of college, grow. They were raw prospects, but had a lot of upside, get better, bypass, the college system. And those were guys like, in Darlan's case, it was a guy who he needed money to send back to his family in Africa. So at the time, the G League offered a sort of alternative then to what the college game was doing, where you couldn't get any money right out of the gates. Obviously, that's now changed. So I think the worst thing you can do is overreact and say, okay, look, this team's adding a former professional. I mean, I need to raise their power rating, 3, 4, 5 points. What we've seen so far, that's just not the reality. The G League is a really, really stacked, deep league. And having covered it now for the last 3, 4 seasons, you see a lot of guys in the G League that might be, bench warmer guys, don't get a lot of run, that are good enough to be in the G League. But, if they had the opportunity, sure, they would, they'd love to be in college, getting paid probably more than the $50,000 minimum that these G League guys get. It's, as far as a financial and just competitive aspect, I don't think it's as big a deal as people are making it out to be. I think it's really just the sticker shock of former professional now playing college. But I mean, anybody who covers the college game, Greg, as you know, will say, but in the college game, I mean, it might as well be another professional league at this point.
Yep, it certainly is. And you just mentioned it, a lot of these college basketball players, they're making a lot more than most of these G League guys as well. Aside from maybe like a guy like a James Nanjian, how much do we need to utilize a sliding scale when it comes to these G League guys? Because I take a look at a guy like an Nanjian, I think that he's probably going to start right away for Baylor, and he's certainly not going to be one of those guys that's coming off the bench at like a mid-major school or something like that. That was a guy that was playing professional basketball out there in Spain, if I'm not mistaken, for FC Barcelona. And I think that that's a little bit different than one of these guys that maybe went into G League Ignite right away and was like the last guy off the bench.
No, 100%. Darlan and Johnson are going to be like, 20, 21 next year. Yeah, Najee's 24. I mean, and that's what's crazy. Like, he was a first-round pick in 2020. He was an NBA champion. We're talking all sorts of history here and what's gone on. So that's where it's different for me. And I just look at a team, and if we're looking at this individually, I mean, the one thing that Baylor has struggled so much and that they'll get, I think, a lot as far as an addition here is just on the defensive end and getting a guy who's got some size, some physicality, a little bit of length that really Baylor, compared to some of these rugged, tough teams in the Big 12, just don't have right now. I mean, you look up and down the roster at the Bears, and they're not a team really that has a ton of experience or continuity together. They don't really utilize the bench. It's pretty amazing. You think about Scott Drew's team, they're still like a top 6-7 offensive team in the country and hit threes at a really high rate, crash the glass really well, but they're clearly missing that edge on the defensive side of the ball. And they played a few decent teams in the non-con, but the only top 25 team they played, they were manhandled by St. John's over the Thanksgiving break. As we all know, you get into Big 12 play, you're going to find out your weaknesses really quickly. So I think in that case, yes, definitely going to be an upgrade there and a situation where it should be very beneficial down the stretch. But Santa Clara, for example, as they go into WCC play, like Darlan's playing, like a handful of minutes off the bench. He's been a really nice add for them and gives them some depth, but by no means is he somebody. And that's where it kind of, who's going to tip the scales. And that's where you say, Greg, it should be really just a case-by-case basis so you look at these guys through.
Yep, exactly. As we do have Ben Wilson, he does such an amazing job over here at VSIN. He does great work with his play-by-play work and so much more. He's joining me right here on Cusco Soups. And now we are getting into conference play. And Ben, you mentioned it. You do a great job with regards to a lot of West Coast teams. I know you do a lot of work in the WAC, the WCC, and WCC conference play. As a matter of fact, it's going to be starting up, if I'm not mistaken, on Sunday into Monday. And how do you take a look at that conference? Because I know that you've seen Loyola Marymount quite up close and in person. I know you've seen a little bit of the Seattle Redhawks as well, and Gonzaga is going to be very clearly the favorite. I don't think I'm revealing any trade secrets there, but that said, I do take a look at the, shall we say, mid-tier of the WCC, the teams outside of Gonzaga and outside of St. Mary's, and I think that tussle for like number 3, number 4 is going to be really interesting because typically that's Santa Clara and that's San Francisco, but it feels like the meat of that conference is a little bit better than it has been in past years.
No, I totally agree. And think about Seattle. Covered them going back to when they were in the WAC. But that's, one of the better defensive teams in the conference overall. If you're just stacking it together, there's a pretty good case to be made that after Gonzaga and St. Mary's, Seattle actually has the best defense in that league. And you think about some of the, the non-conference results they got, like going to Stanford, winning outright on the road, beat Washington. That was a game that was, I think they listed that as a home game. It was not at Seattle's home gym. So it was kind of like a neutral site against, a legit top 50 team. And they won. That's a team that has really good development. They've kept a lot of guys that I think under a lot of programs probably would have gotten picked off in the transfer portal, like Braden Maldonado is, an undersized point guard, but super effective, really good on-ball defender. And draws a lot of fouls, gets to the line a ton. I think he's like the second or third best free throw shooter in the country. So that's the team for me in Seattle. I continue to be impressed with. Loyola Marymount, who I've also watched a lot. I can't help but wonder with Jan Vide having been out, and with Vide in, they were 6-1 in the games Jan Vide played, and they were 7-1 coming out of their Thanksgiving tournament. And without him, they've just been a different team. They got blown out by St. Louis, who's a good, really good team this year, but lost at home to Stony Brook. That's a really bad loss. They were big favorites in that game. They lost at home to UC San Diego, who's certainly taken a big step back after their NCAA tournament trip a year ago. So even though just by the numbers, LMU, on the year, they're a top 50 defense nationally. I just wonder for Stan Johnson. They come right out of the gates. They'll take on St. Mary's in the conference opener, and then they'll have to do the at Wazoo, at Gonzaga trip right after the new year. And then it's San Francisco, Santa Clara right after that. It's a team that I really liked at the start of the year. I'm just not sure with how unsure they are with Vide's status. I really felt like he was the guy that helped build that team and was such a great connector from both offense and defensive sides of the ball. Probably being underrated maybe in the market, just how much he's being missed right now.
Yep, and he was their top scorer prior to him going out as well. We've seen a little bit of him for a game or two, but it's sort of been in and out. You don't know what you're going to be able to get there, so very well said by you. As we do have our good friend Ben Wilson. He does such great work over here at VSIN. He's joining me right here on Cusco Soups, and certainly it's going to be a lot of fun to see what we get there, and I do think that there's going to be a little bit of brutality in the middle of the conference. Obviously, once again, Gonzaga going to be able to roll over so many teams, but how do you take a look at more of these power conferences as well, because we're both men that are from the great state of Wisconsin, and I feel like there's a little bit of a tiered system that has been set up there where Michigan feels like that number 1 team, and then it's a tussle between Purdue and Michigan State to see who's going to be that top contender. But as is typically the case in the Big Ten, it feels like there's a big giant middle out there, and I think that is going to be a lot of fun to see how these teams shake out, especially with so many different styles in the Big Ten this year as well.
Oh, no, 100%. And I thought coming away from, as a Mizzou alum, watching bragging rights pretty closely. Hard to be more impressed and more down, on the two teams. Like, hard to be more impressed than Illinois with what they did. And that's a team, analytically, the metrics love them. And I think part of it's because, they take a ton of threes. They've always done that. And they are a classic team. Like, if you don't bring it defensively, and Mizzou found that out the hard way, like, you are just going to get killed left and right by these guys with the sharpshooters they have. And that's even with probably their best player, Andrej Stojakovic. He's only like a 25% three-point shooter this year, but they have so many other guys. If you're focusing on slowing him down in the interior, that can beat you from outside. And they're going to be a really tough matchup. I also, at the same time, think Illinois is like that classic team that you bet on in Big Ten play and you probably fade in the NCAA tournament. They're stylistically a really tricky matchup, but they've also proven that that sort of loose, flowy offensive system can be really hard to replicate in the NCAA tournament when the stakes are so high. It's one and done. There's just a lot more pressure. But Illinois is, I think, a team that is going to be a bet on here to start conference play, and it probably helps. I mean, they get a nice soft landing. They'll get Penn State and Rutgers out of the gates. 2 games they'll be favored by double digits easily. And then I think the Iowa game will be fascinating now that Iowa has totally flipped under Ben McCollum into this absolutely slow as molasses type team. But those are the sorts of matchups you have to look at early in a conference season. Like in Illinois, Iowa is a great example of what will show you a lot about what sort of style is going to win out when you just get the absolute opposites attracting in those senses.
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to be very interested to see what happens in those sorts of matchups as well. And then we're both men from the great state of Wisconsin, so I have to address that a little bit. What do we make out of this team right now? Because for Wisconsin, when this team is going well, things are going absolutely amazing, it seems. It seems like they're a team that they're very hard to be able to slow down. They look like one of the better teams in all of college basketball. And when things are bad, it feels like things are really bad, and it doesn't feel like there's a lot of in between, even though this team still does the little things like hit free throws well.
They do, but I just look at, if you took the raw analytic profile Wisconsin and you just scrubbed the team name, right? And you just said, okay, here's a team that's going to shoot threes at an insane clip. They're going to take a ton of them, but they're not going to make many of them. So Wisconsin right now, they're a top 15 team in the country as far as 3-point rate. They only hit it a 34.5% clip. That's just not good enough for a legit Power 4 conference team in the Big Ten to win games. And defensively, I mean, this is as bad as I can ever remember Wisconsin being defending the 3-point line. They're giving up threes at a 35% clip at bottom 100 essentially in the country. So if you scrub the name out and you just said, okay, give me a team who can't really defend the three, shoots a ton of threes, but is super hit or miss at actually making them, I would say, yeah, automatically that's kind of a fade. And you look at the team and you go, wait, Wisconsin, a team like that? And as you mentioned, sure, they make up for it. They defend the glass really well. They're a good rebounding team. They make a lot of free throws. They don't take a lot of bad shots. It's just the shooting talent is just, to me, not there. And they'll have to start out. I mean, Purdue, UCLA, Michigan. And I get the 2 of those 3 games are at the Kohl Center. And UCLA is a game you kind of expect to win, just with UCLA going on the road and how much those West Coast teams have struggled in those midweek games going to the Central or Eastern time zones. But still, like, this has the potential to be a huge struggle out of the gates. And I just kind of think that's that's just the reality of where Wisconsin is at. I mean, they have like one good shooter in John Blackwell from the outside, and everybody else, you watch them and you're just like, okay, hope for the best. Even if it's like a wide open corner 3, you just don't feel that confident in it. And I just fear that that's going to be the thing that really holds this team back. And they end up in that like 7 to 10 seed range and will be very, very matchup dependent. We'll be, lucky just to get out of round 1, let alone getting to a weekend of the NCAA tournament.
Yep, I'm right there with you. And I do think that with this Wisconsin team, it'll probably be a lot of what we've seen here in the last few years, where they win 1, maybe 2 games in the NCAA tournament, but they're unable to really recapture that run like that with Sam Decker and company a decade or so ago. So very interested to see what's going to be happening on that front. And Ben, as we are approaching conference play, are there just a few teams that you do have your eye on in general? Maybe they've gotten off to a hot start. You want to see if they're going to be able to continue to have it going, or maybe it's a team that you feel like is flying a little bit under the radar that you think that they could be able to make a little bit more noise here in conference play than they did in non-conference play.
A team that I'm a little surprised they've had the struggles. And I mean, actually, the record isn't horrible, but in the Ohio Valley Conference, before I moved out to the West Coast, I used to cover that conference pretty extensively. It's funny, we were just talking Big Ten and some of the stylistic differences. That league is nuts. How you've got like 3 of I think the top 45 teams tempo-wise. Lindenwood, who is a former D2 team. I used to call a lot of games back when they were a D2. They're off to an awesome start. They're probably the best team in that conference so far. But like them, SEMO, Tennessee State play at a super high rate. And then you have like SIUE was the team that won the league last year and are really, I mean, they're awful on offense, but that's a team in SIUE, the Cougars, who I really like the coaching staff. Brian Baroni's done an awesome job, building that program up. It's hard for me to see their shooting struggles being this bad. Like, I mean, on 2-pointers, they're like a bottom 50 team in the country, which is not very good, especially when you're a team that doesn't really take many threes. But I mean, the players they have should be way better on the interior. And Maring Malith, the senior, has been a really good interior piece. They've had some guys banged up, like Miles Thompson's missed some games. He's been a really reliable guy when he's been in for them. So that's a team that I'm willing to bet on. Just a team that is really good defensively in a conference where they are really good at slowing games down. I think they can get some of these fast tempo team, I'll say like a Lindenwood, like a SEMO, a little bit out of their comfort zone. Tennessee State's the other team I couldn't remember for a second that also is a qualifier there as far as really fast tempo team. I just like teams like that are a little bit more veteran, battle tested, who can lock it down on defense. I kind of think that's going to win out. So even though if you look at the OVC and SIU is kind of middle of the pack right now from a ratings perspective, I still think SIU is going to be a team that is probably a bet on in some of those individual spots when they are taking on, the more fast-paced, up-tempo teams. And I think they get Lindenwood they get right after the new year, which I think will be a really interesting litmus test. But that's a team I do think looks to be in a really good position coming out of the new year to look better than they had been here in the last couple weeks.
Yep, and Lindenwood has been a team that has been pretty good at generating turnovers as well, and they're a team that you've been able to make a little bit of money on if you've been betting on them, so they're a great team to watch. And what else is great is talking with you, Ben. You do such an amazing job looking at this great game of college basketball. You do a great job on so many different fronts, whether that be indoor football, college baseball, tennis, list goes on and on. So love to get people at home know what's on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, appreciate it as always, sir. Ben_Wilson_1. A lot of NBA G League and, of course, the college hoops going on right now. So always fun to be in this busy time of year.
Absolutely. And with Ben, he does such a great job on so many different fronts. And every single time he joins me, he lends such great insight. So big thanks to Ben for joining me out because he's now part of the VSIN family of podcasts. Coming up next, typically it's bank shots with an S. We've got one game on Saturday, so we're going to give you a bank shot. We're going to break down CSUN versus Stanford right here on Just Because Hoops with myself, Greg Peters, and now a part of the VSIN family of podcasts.
DC politicians want to enact harmful credit card mandates that could take away your cash back and rewards points. Perks that stretch your budget and make life a little easier. Losing these benefits means less money for your family's everyday essentials like gas and groceries. The perks you rely on could disappear, leaving you with higher costs and fewer options. Tell Congress to guard your card and oppose the Durbin-Marshall credit card mandates.
Paid for by Electronic Payments Coalition.
Side edge this college basketball season? Well, VSIN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSIN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word.com. For anyone that is new to VSIN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSIN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSIN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSIN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSIN. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peters, and now part of the VSIN family of podcasts. Always great to be joined by Ben Wilson. He does such amazing work here at VSIN every single time he joins me. He wants such great insights, and he did so once again today. So big thanks to Ben for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I gave you it typically is picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Saturdays. We had some bank shots, but we've got one game today, so it's pick and analysis on the lone game that we've got on this betting board as we do hit those bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at @GUnit_D1. I really don't anticipate there being any changes, and it's very easy to go in Las Vegas rotation order when we've got one game. So let's dive in. This is 6-19, 6-20. Cal State Northridge is on the road against Stanford. Stanford, a 16.5 point favorite. 164.5 to 165.5 is the total. I did set my total at a 161.5. I do like the under. Now with CSUN, this has been one of the most rapid-paced teams in all of college basketball. Currently, in terms of total possessions per game, they are 31st. And Stanford, they've actually slowed themselves down by an average of about 4 possessions per game in their last 3 games, but they're still right around about 119th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. I just don't think that you're going to get a lot of second and third chances to score, mainly because Stanford has been doing such a great job on the defensive glass. 22.6% of opponents' missed shots result in an offensive rebound. That's 18th in the country. And CSUN, they're pretty solid on the defensive glass as well. 82nd in terms of defensive rebound percentage, and you got a Stanford team that has been neither here nor there with their offense at home. About 157th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis in their home games, so I did set my line at a 13.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with CSUN, even though you do have, for the Stanford team, one of the most underrated freshmen in all of college basketball. Ibuka Okore, 22 points, 3 assists. He's been shooting about 32% from 3 with nearly 2 steals per game, and that's part of the thing with Stanford as well. This is a top 25 team in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, so they've been able to do a nice job there, 19th to be exact. You've got Chisom Okpara, Benny Gieler, who have been able to combine for about 26 points per game. They combine for about 4.5 assists, 3 steals, so good versatility between the two of them, and this team is not necessarily going to be one that is necessarily super duper imposing with their 2-point shooting defense. They're outside the top 175 with that regard, and I do think that that's going to help out a Northridge team, and typically they are one that likes to take a lot of shots from 3-point range, but they've been a little bit more, shall we say, consistent with trying to be able to drive the ball inside. They become a top 75 team with regards to their 2-point shot percentage this season, and this is a CSUN team that I do still think that they're going to be able to get a few second chances, despite the fact that Stanford has been doing such a great job with their overall defensive rebounding. As CSUN, if you take a look at percentage of missed shots that become an offensive rebound, this offense is right around about 159th in the country. In the road games, about 28% of their missed shots do become an offensive rebound. Now, they do hurt themselves a little bit with the 13.5 turnovers per game, but it's been getting cleaner and cleaner as the season goes along. And to the credit of Stanford, at home they rebound about 31% of their misses as an offensive rebound, but I do think that a man that is going to really keep you lively for the CSUN team is Larry Hughes Jr. Yes, of relation to that, Larry Hughes, 18.5 points. He's been shooting 42% from 3 for a unit that has been outside the top 250 with their 3-point shooting percentage at 31.8%. That's why they're driving the ball a little bit more down low. Mohamed Fafana, though, 9.7 boards. You've got Josiah Davis giving you 6 assists per game. Now, the 4.4 turnovers per game have been quite unsightly, and Josh O'Gara has been able to help out with 14 points, 9.5 rebounds per game. But for Davis, even though he did have that 7 turnover game against Sacramento State, things other than that, they've been getting a little bit cleaner, 4 turnovers or fewer in 4 out of the last 5 games. And then Alexander Smotrich does a nice job coming off the bench, giving you about 4.5 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. I do think that you're going to get quite a few turnovers in this game, and you do have a CSUN team that has been a top 175 team in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. I'm not going to call them like a monstrous defense or anything like that, but I do think that they're going to be able to hold up defensively, and Stanford's main kryptonite has been being outside the top 225 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. That's not going to be unearthed quite as much, so I did set a total here of a 161.5. I'm going to be willing to take a shot on the under and the points with CSUN, and that'll wrap things up for the Saturday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSIN family podcast. Big thanks to Ben Wilson, does such amazing work here at VSIN. He joined me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of 2 ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter. So, as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. I'm with you guys every single day on this podcast, give you picks and analysis on every game, every day. So I will be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.